I believe that the way to have a body you love is to actually love the body you have.
So, to have a transformation, it's not just about how you look in a bikini, it's about how you feel. And to do that, you have to align your mental mindset. You have to align your emotion and your spirit of any trauma that you're physically carrying. And that will then align with your physical body and the positive talk that you have to yourself.
If you wait for motivation, it doesn't appear. Motivation appears when you begin. Today, I'm talking to Simone De La Rue. You may know her from working with the Kardashians and Killer Body. Simone was a dancer. She was in the West End. She was on Broadway. And she's now turned her passion into how you can use exercise to have a killer body or a revenge body, if you like. So welcome, Simone. I'm dying to hear all about you. And everybody wants to hear, first of all, about what it was like working with the Kardashians. So why don't we start there with the juicy stuff?
Sure, Marisa, thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to speak with you today. Kardashians is one of the most well-known family names in everybody's living room over the past 10 years. When I signed up to do this show, we all thought it was a weight loss show. We actually had no idea of the title, that it was called Revenge Body. To me, that had negative connotations because why, as a person, why are you getting revenge on anybody? Like if you want to transform your life and transform your body, you should be doing it for yourself. First.
Exactly.
So we called it the Renew show. The trainers within that show, we put our own spin on that. But I have to say my experience was exceptional. Chloe was an absolute delight. And the show really actually helped, because of course it was a TV show, it was on E, things are very dramatic and hyped up, but the core essence of it and the beauty of it was that it actually really transformed a lot of lives. And it opened up, different forms of fitness and, wellness to so many people. So it was, for me, I absolutely loved the show. It was a really wonderful experience.
So let's talk about having a body that you want to have. So many of us don't like our bodies. We hate our legs or our butt or our abs or our thighs. And many of us believe, well, I was born with this shape and I don't know how to change it. Or when I go on a diet, I lose weight from the wrong places, or I hate going to the gym. So start from the beginning. How can we have a body that we love? I mean, personally, I believe that the way to have a body you love is to actually love the body you have. I think the whole diet industry is based on self-hatred and abuse. We call it punishing workout, killer abs. We go on these really restrictive diets, and what we're doing is hating our body. You've heard that expression, punish those pounds. And I personally think it's so wrong. I believe the only way you can have a body you love is to love the one you're starting off with. Love it so much that you eat better and that you move it a bit because that's what it likes. But let's say we're turning up to listen to you and some of us are unhappy with our shape. What can we do about it? And how can we make doing it fun? So what is your advice to someone starting out who doesn't really like going to the gym, can't afford a gym membership, or just doesn't like it? Where can we start from to have a kind of body that we're happier with?
Well, whenever a client comes in and has a session with me, whether they come into a group class or a private session, we always practice what I call mirror minutes. So we ask the person to actually look at themselves in the mirror directly in the eye, which is very confronting. People really struggle with this, at looking at their own reflection. So usually people can't even look at themselves, but when they eventually do make that contact, I ask them to say one positive thing that they love about their bodies. Now, most of my work is with women, and, I find that this is such a huge challenge to ask a woman to say just one positive thing about their bodies. And I am known in the industry as the celebrity trainer, that I've trained all of these actresses for movies and how do you get so-and-so's arms and so-and-so's body and abs. And, this has been shoved down our throats of like, this is how we should look. And it's warped our expectations of what a real female body looks like. So over the past 10 years, my work has really evolved to become more about how does exercise make you feel? And so, when you're looking in that mirror and you're looking at yourself for the first time, like, we can't all look like Kate Moss. It's like we cannot change our genetics, right? We have to learn to love the body and this, as you mentioned before, love the skin that we're in. And that doesn't come from the exercise. That comes from the inner work, the internal work of actually believing that you're worthy of the change or believing that you're worthy of putting in the work. It's about shifting your mindset and silencing that negative chatter that's constantly says your bum's too big or your hips are too big and set yourself up with habits that will set you up for a lifestyle choice. So of course, that's easier said than done when you come in to work out for the first time. People come to me and they want the quick fix, and so I say, we've got to go back to the very beginning and dig deep and have a look. Is there a trauma? Is there a reason why you're emotionally eating? Why did you get in the way of yourself being the best version of yourself? What is that emotional block? So, to have a transformation, it's not just about how you look in a bikini, it's about how you feel. And to do that, you have to align your mental mindset. You have to align your emotion and your spirit of any trauma that you're physically carrying. And that will then align with your physical body and the positive talk that you have to yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. So how can you make people love exercising? And tell me also what you think about, a little while ago, they had this 3-minute workout, because I find some people say, we look at a celebrity, but what we forget is they've been given $10 million to get into shape. If someone gave me $10 million, I'd be in the gym for 6 hours a day. I'd work out. It's like when I've forgotten the girl who was in Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Linda, somebody, but she was paid a huge amount of money and all she had to do was work out every day and get into shape. But that was her job. So when it's your job, it's completely different. And if I was given a huge amount of money, I'd have killer abs, toned arms, buns of steel, and I'd have like really powerful thighs, because that would be my job. And I'd have a chef coming around making me all these keto meals and making me green juices. But when we don't have that, we've got a business and a family and all kinds of stuff going on. And we compare ourselves to these celebrities. I remember Adele saying that she had 3 trainers. And she said she worked out for 4 hours a day. But when you're Adele, you have a personal chef, you have a nutritionist, you have 3 different trainers, and they come to your house and it's a job. You're about to go on stage and get millions of dollars. So it's a job. But if I'm not Adele and I've got 3 kids, a partner, a house, a commute, all this stuff, and I can't afford a personal trainer, maybe I can't even afford gym membership, how do I get my body into shape? What do I do? And how do I do it?
Yeah, exactly right. I always say that people have no idea that celebrities are paid to look like that.
Of course they are. And they have 3 gyms in there. They have a gym in their house. They have everything. I've been to many clients' houses and they've got 2 gyms and a massage. They've got everything going on. But the regular everyday person doesn't have that. What can they do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I always say to a client, we are going to set realistic, attainable, achievable goals. If you're like going to turn around and say, I want to lose 30 pounds in 12 weeks, you're going to probably injure yourself. You're going to set yourself up for failure. You're going to binge eat. You're going to be exhausted and you'll fall off the wagon and you won't have attained or reached that goal. So I always say, but let's start small and literally 10 minutes a day. If you can do 10 minutes, that is better than not doing 10 minutes a day. My advice is get your butt off the couch, do something. And I think if we change and shift our mindset to, I'm going to work out for 10 minutes. I'm going to do 10 minutes of cardio because it's going to energize me. It's going to put me in a good, it'll boost my mood. It'll pump me for good endorphins. I'm going to be a better mom. I'm going to be a better boss. I'm going to be more present at work. Thinking about the mental, effects that exercise will have rather than the physical and cosmetic, then people are more likely to want to do that. I know it's difficult and it's easy to say that, I get paid to work out myself because I get paid to train people.
Sure.
I always say start small. And if you do that 10 minutes and you feel those good endorphins, you're more likely to extend to 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Before you know it, you've done a workout.
So what would those 10 minutes of cardio look like? If you're telling someone, let's imagine here that no one knows anything. You know, many years ago, I was doing a talk for Weight Watchers, and it was for these brides that were getting married, and I asked one of them, and she asked me, she wanted to tone up her arms, and I was saying, we need to do the fly. She goes, but I don't know what the fly is. Yes. So we have to assume that people don't even know what 10 minutes of cardio means. I'm sure most of them do, but what does 10 minutes of cardio look like? What is that?
So this is the other thing that I say to people. You need to choose something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Something, because if I say to you, oh, you're going to run, but you hate running, you're not going to do it. If that means a 10-minute hike, if that means a 10-minute swim, that means a 10-minute cycle, that means 10 minutes doing jumping jacks, that means 10 minutes doing dance cardio, some kind of high intensity exercise that gets your heart rate up and puts you calorie burning state, and I don't, I was a dancer. My method is based in dance, but I just say, do whatever resonates with you. And if you love to walk or hike, do that, whatever it will take to get you up off the couch and do that. But you got to make sure that you're getting your heart rate up, that you are in a calorie burning state.
I used to love skipping. Actually, that was always my thing. I take a skipping. I'd even skip in a hotel room. But I had to have great music. That would keep me going, skipping. And I had a rebounder, which was really cool, little mini trampoline. And I could skip on that. And as you say, it would just be 10 minutes. I played some music I loved. And then I graduated to a weighted skipping rope. And that really helped too, because it was working my arms. But I loved the skipping. I loved the rebounding. I wouldn't like running in the rain per se, although I don't mind running, but my knees don't like me running anymore. I think I ran so badly. When I used to live in LA, I used to run up and down a canyon, and that actually wasn't good for me, running on concrete. But you're right. When you find out something you love, is it skipping? Is it running? Is it power walking? Is it running around the park? Someone told me, and I'm not even sure it's true, but I thought it was a very good thing to believe. You only need to do 3 exercises: lunges, crunches, and the plank. I didn't really see how that would work out your arms, but I loved that. Lunges, crunches. When I'm in my kitchen, which has a kitchen island, I tend to do lunges all the time while my husband is cooking, because I just lean on this kitchen island and it doesn't feel like I'm working out. So I've got to go and put my workout clothes on. I find for some of this, I've got to get changed, drive to the gym. That's an hour, do a workout, then wash my hair, get changed again, and drive home. That's another hour. And for me, I used to go to the gym in my workout clothes. And I love the fact we now have leisure wear. I never used to take them off. I mean, obviously it's a bit sweaty, but I was more into yoga, which isn't sweaty. Yeah. So if your workout is taking 3 hours, you've got to try and find out a way of making it take less. And I'd love to tell you this figure because it's amazing. 25% of who buy gym membership never show up. Isn't that amazing? 25% pay for a membership. My husband is one of them, by the way, so I really get that. He paid for the most expensive gym in Chelsea where all these Chelsea footballers go, and I loved it. It was a real state-of-the-art place. It had an amazing yoga teacher. I was there every day. I think he went twice, and it was really expensive.
People want a quick fix. People don't want to necessarily do the work. And so they think, if I sign up, if I get a therapist, but I only go once, or if I, sign up to a gym, but I only go once, at least I did it. I'm telling everybody I did it, So because there's nobody necessarily always keeping that person accountable. So it's like, it really has to come down to, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Yeah. I say this all the time with my clients. I can give anyone a meal plan. I can give anyone recipes. I can give anyone a workout program. But unless they are willing to do the work, they are not going to see change.
So how can we make them love the work? So now we've got 10 minutes of cardio. It could be walking, running, skipping, swimming. Could be running up and down the stairs in your house. It could be running up and down the corridors in your apartment building. There's lots of things you could do. And when it's 10 minutes, everyone's got 10 minutes. How can you make yourself love it more?
I think, the silver lining that's come out of this pandemic is that as you said, it would take an hour to get to your workout. You'd work out for an hour to get back. That's 3 hours of your day. Now we can literally roll out, no makeup on, your pajamas on, put, a streaming digital platform on, work out, and then go and eat your breakfast and go to your Zoom meeting. So definitely, it's made it easier for us to exercise. It's not the same as having that in-person experience and feeding off the energy of your trainer or the teacher. However, there's no excuse. You can literally work out in your pajamas.
Yeah, but you can do yoga, Pilates, whatever. As long as you have a good instructor, you can do anything. I mean, every television network now has some kind of exercise. I used to work out to Gillian, who does the shred. I loved her. I used to work out a lot to that. But I find when you work out at home, it's so easy to cheat. Oh, I don't like that bit. I'm just going to skip that. It's not quite the same as having someone in the class going, oh, come on, you're slacking. My neighbors who I love, they have a trainer come every single day because they said that they just otherwise only do the bits they like. And I find I'm guilty of that. I only do the bits I love. I don't really want to do the bits I hate. The bits I hate are the ones I should do more.
Exactly. It's exactly right. But going back to your question about how do we love it more, I have a 2.5-year-old son. And so now I think about, well, how can I make exercise, how can I include him and how can it be a family experience? So, rather than thinking, a dreaded cardio, maybe you go on a family hike on a Saturday or you're just finding different ways that you can include family members and include friends. That way it keeps you accountable. And it also is then showing especially your children that you are putting your health and priority, your health and wellness as a priority.
Yeah, I wrote a book a long time ago called You Can Be Younger, about how to slow down aging. And one of the things it said was that there's nothing on the planet that is as effective as exercise for slowing down aging. And there probably never will be. The studies on how exercising slows down aging are extraordinary. And so sometimes I think we have to do it for different reasons. Why am I doing it? Because I could look 10 years younger. I could be more active. I could live longer on the planet. I could have more fun with my kids. So when your clients come to see you to work out, tell us some of the motivations that get them to come and find you.
Yeah, I mean, the first obvious ones are the ones that are working towards a film role where they need like an action figure. And so obviously that there's a lot of motivation behind that because they're getting paid to look like that. But I also work with a lot of women who their motivation is they've just come back from having a baby. I do a lot of postnatal, and trying to just reconnect to their core and just making time for themselves again, to finding the energy and the strength. Often you'll get brides preparing for their wedding day. I get, people from all different walks of life. But I find that what's easier for people to stay on track as if they have a goal that they're working towards, whether that's a bachelorette, a wedding, pre or postnatal, an anniversary or anything like that. When people have a goal, that is what is going to motivate them and something to work
avoiding being old and sick is a really good one too, isn't it?
I know it is. And that's one thing that I'm 47, I'll be 48 this year. And I'm so in denial that I'm getting older, that I will be 50 soon. And it's actually now my goal because I want to be 50 and I want to be on the cover of a fitness magazine and say, this is what 50 can look like. This is what 50 will look like if you, work out and take care of yourself. So it's such a bizarre mind shift for me now to think about exercise to prevent, aging, when I was always, I danced from the age of 3 and I always just thought, well, I'll be young forever.
But I spent a lot of time in blue zones where people live until 100 plus. And actually, when you go to blue zones, they all exercise. When you go somewhere like Japan and see people doing Tai Chi in the street, they all exercise, but they don't really go to the gym. They may do a Tai Chi class in the village square every morning or out or in the park, but they don't go to the gym. They walk everywhere. They just don't have gyms they go to. So if you go to Sardinia, for instance, it's just their life in a hilly region. They walk up and down the hills all the time. But I think a lot of us have overlooked how powerfully aging can be slowed down by exercise. So, tell us about that, about, how we can slow down our aging by pure exercise. Obviously, you need to eat well and drink water too.
Yeah, especially for women now, when we hit premenopausal and menopause, we lose our muscle mass. And so one of the great ways to not lose it is to keep working at it. So, anything over the age of 40 now, I say to women that they should be focusing more on strength training as opposed to cardio. Like we grew up in the world where, I need to lose weight. Let's just run on a treadmill for half an hour and let's do loads of cardio. No, to prevent aging, to prevent osteoporosis, to help prevent early onset menopause or diabetes, but to keep muscle mass, as your body is aging, as our skin is aging, you need to do strength training. So that means lifting weight, actually, whether it's going to the gym or if you're going to lift boxes or whatever you can, but you need to be doing some strength training. Then obviously cardiovascular health. And I think, when you're going back to talking about in Tokyo and Japan, they don't see it as a chore. Like that's a way of life. That's what they do, every day is a part of their way of life rather than, I have to do this.
Yeah. And that's a bit like being a farmer. A farmer probably doesn't go to the gym because they're lifting bales of hay all the time. And the same thing if you were a builder or a construction worker, it would be part of your way of life, as you say, being a dancer. But can your body be the weight? When you're doing press-ups, that still is weight training, isn't it? But your body is the weight resistance, isn't it? When you're doing press-ups and push-ups and the plank. Is that correct? Yes.
So you can use your own body weight. It's a little bit more challenging and difficult to gain muscle mass when you just your own body weight, but it's a great way to maintain. So I definitely recommend trying to have at least 1 to 2 sessions a week of weight training.
And you should be using small hand weights. Is that right? Is it small hand weights and lots of reps or heavy weights? Well, what is it?
We used to when we were younger in the Jane Fonda, era, and also when I started off training, it was the idea.
I used to teach for her.
You did?
Yeah, I used to teach at Jane Fonda's in South Robertson. I was one of her trainers. I remember in South Robertson Boulevard, and it's amazing. We used to run barefoot on concrete. It's so bizarre now when I look back at that. But I love her. She and look at the way she looks because she's always exercised. It's part of her life. But she exercised. I think she began that to change her mood. And it's funny how often we come at exercise, not because I want to change my body. I think she wanted to change her mood and it really worked.
I did not know that. That's
how I got into my whole journey with the mind, because most people going to her studio would run for an hour and live on Diet Coke because they wanted to look better. And in order to look better, they kind of missed the point, the whole 80s. And I missed the point that you should be doing this to feel better. You see, vegan says, I'm going to be a vegan because I want to look good in my genes. A vegan says, I just can't eat animals. I've got cats and dogs and chickens. I couldn't eat them. And I think this is the whole problem with the industry. When you go on a diet to lose weight, to look good, when you go to the gym to work out, to look good, it's not the same motivation as when you say, look, I don't want to get osteoporosis. I want to be active. I want to have children and run around with them and grandchildren. I think if your motivation is, I want to live longer and be healthier, it's much easier. But most people who go on to diet and exercise do it to look good. So other people judge them better. And it has such a massive, massive failure rate because apart from someone who's doing it to be in a movie, we're not doing it for the right reasons. Do you find that? Well, you probably don't find that with your clients, but it's a big thing, isn't it?
Yes and no. Yeah, I think, and you're exactly right. Unless you're doing it for the right reasons, you're not going to do it or you're not going to see the change or you'll give up. We think about, the pandemic that we've just come out of, addiction rates are up. There's more alcoholism, there's, more drug addiction, there's more depression, there's more anxiety. And, my thing is you need to talk about it. We need to get those feelings out. that helps you with your mind, but the physical feelings in your body, you have to move your body as well. Like use exercise as a tool as your therapy. Like I've always said, I have a t-shirt that says dance is my therapy. You know, and training people to do that. Like just 10 minutes exercise is going to get you out of that funk. It's going to make you feel better. It might not change your life, but for that, you know, that short period of time is going to put you in a better mindset.
So I have clients who have a swimming pool in their garden and a whole gym. They may have a Pilates reformer or that whole, I forgot what it's called, when you have the whole weight up kit in one, it's a little thing, isn't it? It's got the bench and the pull downs and they never use it.
Yeah.
When I ask them why, they go, well, I'm waiting to be motivated, as if motivation goes, hello, I'm here now. I've come to make you work out. If you wait for motivation, it doesn't appear. Motivation appears when you begin. I often do not want to get on my reformer, but I think I just do some legs. I can do that for 10, but put on some music. And when I begin it, I often am up there for an hour because my motivation begins. I might think I'm just going to paddleboard down 2 canals because I live on a canal. I love paddleboarding. And then I often do all 6. But I think we forget that we're waiting for, I've got a gym, I've got the little bands, I've got the hand weights, I'm sitting on the sofa. But you can actually work out on the sofa. You can do some stomach crunches and arm lifts on the sofa. But if you wait to be motivated, it doesn't happen. You have to be motivated. You have to start and then motivation comes.
Yeah, I never knew or understood why people had, you know, a trainer until, 10, 12 years ago, I became a trainer. And then I realized, you are the one that helps guide the person, motivate them.
You're the motivator.
They don't want to, let you down. So they're going to show up. And that's the biggest thing is like getting to the session. Just get to the session. The rest will be fun and easy. Maybe not easy, but the rest, that's half the work done is just getting there. So yeah, if you can't get motivated, then you definitely need to find someone that can help motivate you, whether that's in person or whether that's, in an app or some kind of online streaming service now where you've got people telling you what to do.
Or having an accountability buddy, because our chances of succeeding go up 80% when we have to be accountable. So when you turn up at someone's house to work them out and they've paid for you in advance, they don't want to let you down. It's like, and they don't feel that they've got to do it properly because you're there. So they're trying to please you and impress you. I know when I was getting married, I had someone who came and worked me out. I didn't really want to do it, but he came twice a week and I wanted these really good arms. And I had a very unforgiving, like satin column wedding dress. But he was my accountability buddy. I couldn't really let him down. Plus, I'd paid for it. So if you have an accountability buddy, and for those of you listening, that may mean that you have to find someone to work out with. Could be a neighbor, could be a friend, could be someone online. But when you hold each other accountable, you think, I can't really cancel going for a walk because my friends depend on. I can't really cancel that 6 o'clock run because my friends are depending on my body is running with me. And I think that's sort of what works in Weight Watchers. It doesn't always, but the fact that you're turning up and getting weighed, I don't agree with that. But I can really see how it works because they are holding you accountable every week. And so finding someone, if you can't afford a personal trainer, but often you can divide their fee and have 3 or 4 people. But if not, having an accountability buddy that you work out with, or at least account with, I'm going to call you every Friday and commit to working out twice that week. It really helps you to stick it out because when we're accountable, our chance of success goes up by a whopping 80%, which is really interesting. I'd love to talk to you about the other thing that you do so well, which is how do you help people eat better? What do you do?
It's such an interesting one because we're all intelligent people and we all know that, maybe I should just have 1 glass of wine, not the whole bottle, or I have 1 piece of cake or 1 slice of pizza, but not the whole cake. Mm-hmm. We all know this, but it's when you get to that, moment where you're going to choose to do that or not, what takes over and says, no, let's just have the 1 piece. So, and I say this about everything. I can give people a meal plan and a recipe. I can, check in with them, but once again, only they can do the work. Mm-hmm. But the way that, I grew up in classical ballet from a very young age. I was always surrounded by like eating disorders. And I remember my mum was like, we're not doing this. We're not going down that path. Like, I'm not going to let you, starve yourself and all the horrible toxic, environment that happens when you need to be a certain weight. And so I really am very grateful and thankful to her for instilling that in me in a young age. But I always say to clients, is like, we should be looking at food and how, what is your relationship with food? If you're torturing yourself, if you think that this is a reward or it's a punishment, we should be looking at food to fuel our body so that we can be present and speak to one another like this. So we can have the energy to go and do a workout, so we can be present with our family. Really thinking about when you're eating this, does this make me feel energized, or does this make me feel lethargic? Or if I eat this, how will it make me feel the next day? Because how will my body process that? As opposed to, if I eat this, it's going to make my bum look big, or I'll get a double chin, like the crazy thoughts that we have. So it's really changing your outlook and your relationship with food. And that is one of the hardest things to shift, especially in women, because we were all, we all knew, or we went through in our 20s, if I just don't eat for 3 days, I'll be able to drop all the weight, or I'll look fabulous if I just don't eat for a couple of days. Or, the dancers' diet back in that day, I never smoked cigarettes, but people would like smoke cigarettes and drink Coca-Cola. And that was, that was the diet for the day.
Yeah, when I worked for Jane Fonda, it was the same thing, that the classic trainer's diet was Diet Coke, Diet Hot Chocolate, Diet Cappuccino, and oatmeal with sweetener in it. And you think there's such a terrible, terrible diet. Diet Coke, Diet Oatmeal, and Diet Cappuccinos. And people could live on those. I mean, and it's all chemicals. There's nothing real in there, but it's so bizarre what we do to ourselves in an effort to be lighter, to be leaner. We eat a bunch of chemicals because we just don't get it that, we could actually eat well. I'd love to find out some of the things that you eat, if you don't mind, because you look so good. Your skin's amazing, hair's amazing. So obviously you practice what you preach. So can I ask you what kind of things you eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks?
Yeah, thank you for that. I am a big advocate in eating real food, whole foods, organic where possible. I'm not going to push the protein bars or the smoothies, or, I think if you pick up anything and you can't read what it is, you don't know what it is on the label, don't buy it.
Yeah.
I do believe in like the caveman diet of, meat and 2 vegetables, or, always having some kind of protein, and then, healthy vegetables. For breakfast, I would eat either, avocado on toast with eggs on top, or I would have some kind of muesli with blueberries and banana. I know we all went through the stage where it was rice milk, and then it was almond milk, and now it's oat milk. I actually drink, dairy, like shock horror. I don't substitute things. I just eat real food. I love chocolate. That's my downfall, but I will allow myself to eat chocolate. Last night we had a roast dinner Sunday. So we had a Sunday roast chicken and roast vegetables, which is absolutely delicious. And then for lunch, I'll have some kind of like sandwich or a protein again, and salad. I'll snack on seeds and nuts and yogurt and cheese and fruit. And I'm not strict. Sometimes I listen to my body. And if it's that time of the month, or I'm feeling like I want to have some ice cream, I'll have some ice cream. Or if I'm out at dinner somewhere nice and I want to have a glass of red with my steak frites, I'll let myself do that. And I think, when you are not obsessed about food, your body doesn't. Your body doesn't hold onto it, because you allow it to flow through you with no guilt, and you enjoy it. But everything in moderation.
Yeah, and you just said something really interesting, because that's the problem, that we start to believe I need to diet. I got to go on this diet to lose weight. It's not working. I need a different diet. I need a stricter diet. And now we've become what I call addicted to dieting because we have a belief I can only lose weight if I diet. But you said something which I found really interesting, which is sometimes my body wants it. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk about the lies people tell themselves in the diet, weight loss, working out field. People say to me, I was doing, but I craved sugar. My body wanted sugar. I must have needed it because my body wanted it. I said, but if that worked, surely your body would also go, hey, I need some broccoli now. I'm absolutely gagging for some carrots here, because no one says, yeah, my body was just craving lettuce. I must have needed it because my body wanted it. But they say, I needed a glass of wine. I could feel the craving. I needed some sugar. I was so tired. I needed chocolate to wake up. And if I was craving it, that's my body telling me I needed it, which would be okay, except they never say, but a week ago, my body was absolutely craving sauteed onions and just craving some spinach. So if that was really true and our body was telling us what we need, it would be telling us you need more salad, you need more cruciferous vegetables, you need more green stuff here. But it only seems to tell us that we need sugar, which I've always thought was very funny. I have hundreds of them say, I craved sugar, my body needed it. But they never come back and say, gosh, my body told me you really need some green vegetables this week. Although vegetarians will tell me that, because I eat vegetables so much, I crave them. If you drink water a lot, you tend to crave water. But what do you think that is when people say, my body is craving sugar, so I had to have some? Because it's not, your body really never craves sugar. That's your mind, isn't it?
Well, I think if someone says they're craving sugar, that to me is an addiction.
But it's really the mind, isn't it? It's not really the body at all. The body never says, hey, knock me out with some Cadbury's dairy milk. It's the mind it's the same thing with alcohol.
Mm-hmm. But I think as far as, for me personally, and I exercise a lot, there'll be times when my body needs more protein, to refuel and rebuild the muscle, or I'm about to do, a film for my app, tomorrow, and I've got 8 hours of filming. So my body needs the carbohydrates the night before to give me energy. So I think when people are really in tune with their bodies and they listen to what their body needs, for me, that is always healthy food, like what my body, needs. As far as like, I'm craving sugar. Yeah, I crave sugar sometimes. It's usually around that time of the month, but I know it's my addiction. It's my addiction to sugar because it's an instant gratification that makes me feel good in that moment.
But you can have better sugar.
Yes. But if people can actually stop and just try to really be in tune with their bodies, it's like when you need more sleep, when you need more fluids, when you need to stop and meditate. If we could learn to become a little bit more in tune with ourselves and those needs, they can all have a very positive impact, and they can be positive needs, not I needed a glass of wine,
Yeah. And it's that same thing. Sometimes I drive to San Diego a lot, and I'm usually very good at taking stuff. But the other day we had to leave in a hurry, didn't take anything. And it's very easy to stop in a garage, you call it a petrol station, think, well, I need a protein bar, but you can actually buy a banana and some nuts. Because I try not to eat stuff in a packet. I do occasionally, but I think, okay, a protein bar with a banana and nuts is the same. I can buy some almonds and an orange, or a protein bar. So I try to buy the real stuff. Yeah, I'd rather buy a packet of peanuts than a protein bar, because at least I know they're just peanuts. They've got salt on them, but you can get unsalted ones. But it's that ability to think ahead. Does my body really need a protein bar? And if so, wouldn't it also need an orange and a packet of almonds instead?
I always think about, my son now, like what I feed him. Like I will never feed him a protein bar, or a sugary snack. It's like, what's this, the snack? Is it yogurt? Is it an apple, banana? Is it hummus? Is carrot? What are those things that you would feed your child? Why are you not feeding them to yourself?
I'd love to ask you why you'd never feed him a protein bar, because we're so programmed to think, but they're super healthy. They're balanced. They're nutritious. They're lean. So tell me why you would never give him a protein bar.
Well, we don't necessarily know what's 100% in them, even if like they're all organic and, you know, like the FDA here in America is a lot lower standards than like in Australia, for example. And so there are, you know, like we don't necessarily know what chemicals are in there, like what is giving it that peanutty taste or that, you know, but and children at that age should not be having like unprocessed like protein powders because their bodies can't digest them either. So there's those reasons, but also too, I would always choose, you know, once again, real foods, whole foods, as I would want to put in my body too.
Because I walked into Whole Foods recently and I looked at the protein, the whole aisle, and I thought, you know, this is like kind of madness. This whole aisle is protein bars, and most of them are nothing more than candy bars in disguise. Some of them are better than others, but a lot of them are just terrible. And you think, but how people who's brainwashed us to believe that these are good?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I know some of them are, I get, is it Boo bars or Google bars? And I do like those, but I don't buy them very often. But most of them, the ones called Kind and Nicer, they're just a candy bar by another name. And it's just so wrong that we're so brainwashed by food companies who'll take any product and mess it up if there's money in it. So, you know, you used to be able to buy rice cake and it'd be just a rice cake, but now we have caramel flavored rice cakes. You used to be able to buy oat cakes. I mean, oat cakes was just a Scottish thing that were quite useful when you were a farmer. You'd have some oat cakes in one pocket and hard-boiled eggs in the other. And that's what people lived on, because it was basically you made oats and you made it into a little patty and you carried it with you. And now they have oat cakes with chocolate chips in them. And it's like, wow, even healthy food, there's going to be someone who's going to take that and mess it up and completely ruin it for you. Like yogurt, you know, yogurt has just become nothing more than pudding unless you get the real good stuff. But I feel so sad for consumers who don't know this. Go, yeah, but this is healthy. I'm having yogurt, I'm having oat, I'm having rice cakes, I'm having fruit, I'm eating yogurt covered raisins. Like, no, you're eating sugar covered dried sugar. There's no such thing as a yogurt covered raisin. They're just lumps of crystallized sugar covered in more sugar with a bit few chemicals on top. But it makes me so cross that consumers are up against that, because it's not their fault. But it's very hard to make people not see. But, you know, some people don't buy ingredients. They don't buy ingredients. They buy food. They buy ready meals and they buy stuff in little, you know, I keep saying to my husband, don't bring home all that chopped up salad and it's lost all its, you need to buy it with a bit of dirt on it and chop it up. So he loves buying pre-chopped up broccoli. And I'm like, but I don't know how it's preserved now. It's lost all its goodness anyway. And who knows what's that sprayed with. So yeah, but the lie we tell ourselves, I'm eating salad in McDonald's, so it must be healthy. People say to me things like, well, I'm having pizza and, you know, the base is a carb and the cheese is a protein and the tomato is a vegetable. The tomato is actually a fruit, but that doesn't matter. But we lie to ourselves. So I would really love you to share with us some of the lies people tell you. They don't know they're lying. They think it's real. You know, dried fruit, that's better than candy, isn't it? Surely tinned fruit is better than dessert. But tell me some of the lies people tell you unwittingly, unwillingly, that get in their way of working out and being healthy and eating better. What are the most common lies people tell themselves to stop them exercising better, eating better, and living better?
It was one of the things working on the TV show Revenge Body that we had clients that wanted to lose 30, 40, 50, 60 pounds. And so often those people didn't have the privilege of having the tools and the knowledge to know what was the correct thing to eat, when to eat, and what exercise to do. And I remember one client coming in and saying to me, oh, well, I had a salad yesterday. And I was like, to your point, where was the salad? They got the salad from McDonald's, but on the salad were the croutons, which are extremely high in fat. And then the Thousand Island dressing on top of that, which is, and once again, pure fat.
Yeah.
And the quality of the lettuce, as we know, no offense to McDonald's or fast food chains, but there's no vitamins and minerals.
Oh, goodness, nothing.
So I was like, well, you may as well have just eaten cardboard or fat there, So it's just like literally retraining people's minds to know, what is healthy, and we don't necessarily have to spend a lot of money to be healthy. Like we're in an age now where everything is so easily accessible. Postmates and Uber Eats and all of this food that can be delivered to us.
And Instacart, where you can deliver your food in 2 hours.
You can just go to the supermarket, each day or every second day, just buy the fresh produce that you need for that meal or for, cook up enough meals to make it last for the 3 days. But really know what it is that you're putting into that food, because obviously takeaway food is extremely high in sodium, in salt. Extremely high in sugar. So we don't necessarily know what it is that we're putting.
Yeah, we don't know what's in it. Yeah. But if you make the food, you do.
You do, exactly. And as far as exercise, someone will say, oh, well, I just went for a walk, or I just, I grabbed these weights and I just did this. And, I always say, look, anything is better than nothing. So even if that just means walking, but you have to work out with intensity, so like thinking about working out with 100% intensity, not just like chatting on your phone or watching the TV, or, you need to make sure that, you've got that intensity behind it. So I think people fool themselves or tell themselves the lie that they're eating well or that they're exercising well when, they're not necessarily. But sometimes it's not always people's fault. We just don't have enough knowledge out there. Like go to the grocery store and you pick up muesli and you think, oh, I'm getting muesli for breakfast. That must be me. And you turn it over and it's like 22 grams of sugar in a muesli packet. It's like you actually have to go and really closely look at the things that you're picking up. Same again with yogurt, especially for kids. Like they package it in these cute little things that the kids see. I want the strawberry with the smile on its face. And you look at that, it's 7 grams of sugar in that. And say, no, you just buy the plain yogurt that.
Yeah, absolutely plain.
So, it's society and media have a lot to answer for. Because
I used to buy protein powder occasionally because I travel so much and I'd find it really helpful. I've got on the plane, I've got my little protein powder in the cup, it's dry, and then I'd add water to it, and then that would keep me going until we got served some food, or sometimes I wouldn't eat aeroplane food. But even I noticed that when you look at a protein powder, I only buy the plain pea protein, but when you look at it and it lists everything separately, you think, wow, this is all sugar. I mean, the sugar content of this is extraordinary because everything is as good. And I notice how naughty they are because they say sucrose, fructose. They list it all separately, lactose. They don't list it together. You go, oh, look, here's some. The first ingredient is sucrose, and then the next ingredient is lactose, and the next ingredient is maltose. And it's like you just seen sugar 3 times, and I thought everything ending in O's is sugar, which your body doesn't need. But we're lied to so much by the food industry. You need it. This is good for you. This is nature's own, farm fresh, barn fresh, and sun-drenched chocolate raisin bars. And so since food companies lie to us so much, it's not surprising that we now lie to ourselves. These are sun-drenched almond bars full of goodness. No, they're just cookies. This is farm fresh granola. It's got in raisins and coconut things and yogurt covered in raisins, and it's just sugar. And so it's hard, I think, because we're lied to so much to know how to tell ourselves the truth. I mean, I know for myself because I am also always writing books about diet that I kind of have a list of the lies I hear the most, but I never blame people for that, which is it's so boring to go on a diet. It's not fun. Everyone else can eat what they like and I can't. What's the point? I'm just going to put it all back on again. Why bother? It doesn't last. I can't enjoy myself. Life's too short. That's the ones I hear about changing the diet. I won't be any fun anymore. I won't be able to go out. It takes ages to lose it. You put it all back on again. But then there are different lies, I guess, in the gym, which are, it's so painful. I can't afford it. What's the point? But again, what are the lies you hear the most that people tell themselves to avoid, eating differently and exercising?
I think the biggest one is that people say, well, I'm too scared to get started because I don't think I'll see results.
Yeah.
People are like focused on the result rather than the process.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even allow them to do the process because all they want is the end goal. And I guess it's the biggest thing is scared of failure. Everyone thinks that actually, can I do this? And that's why we need to, as a society, change the language on this, because eating well and exercising should not be a chore. It should not be something that you dread, that you can't do, that you won't be fun doing. We need to change the way
I'm sure
that.
And I'm sure you hear this classic lie, I don't have time. I don't have time to work out, which makes sense, except when you work out, you have so much more energy that you actually get time back, because when you do just a bit of exercise a day, you actually gain time.
I say, have you got 10 minutes to go on social media?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Got 10 minutes to work out.
Yeah. I want to ask you one more question before we have to end today. And I want to ask you about the resting metabolic rate. How when we go on a diet, our metabolic rate becomes slower, and then that really works against us. Do you have any advice or information about that you could share with our audience?
Yeah, because people often ask me about intermittent fasting. Should they do it? Does it work? Gone are the days where you eat dust or that you starve yourself to lose weight, especially as you're getting older. It does slow down your metabolism. So if anything, we should be grazing and eating more to keep fueling the metabolism, burning, keep processing the food. Because if you don't eat, or if you do such a strict diet, like juice cleansers, I'm a big no on juice cleansers and soup cleansers and all this sort of stuff. Because it's like, yes, of course you're going to drop weight. You're just drinking liquid. But the minute you eat a solid, you're going to put that weight back on again.
Yeah.
So if you're doing a juice cleanse and detoxify your system for inflammation, yes, I get all of that. But if you're looking at it, as a diet, then no. So, and then that comes back to, again, about making it a healthy lifestyle. By putting the stress on your body, by doing such strict diets and not having a healthy, balanced diet, you're going to end up binge eating somewhere. But definitely without consuming enough calories, your body is going to go into shutdown mode. And then the next time you feed it, it's like, oh, she's fed me, quick, let's just have a party because she's fed me, because we don't know when she's going to feed me again. So, I'm not a big believer in, crazy strict diets. But, you need to think sensibly about what are the calories I'm putting in, and what's the calories I'm burning, the excessive, what's the exercise I'm doing, and do they match up? If they're in calories and what you're actually burning, then there's a problem. But, we need to get past the point of thinking that restrictive diet, punishing ourselves, starving ourselves is going to help, especially as we get older. Women over 40, we need to be making sure for our hormones and being, because they play such a huge impact into our, weight gain and weight loss, making sure that our hormone levels, are balanced as well. And it doesn't get easier as you get older. It gets much more challenging.
Yeah. And, I did that. I was very much a victim of that when I was working for Jane, that we all would starve ourselves or have a protein bar for lunch. And then we say, oh, I've been so good.
Yeah.
And then I know Weight Watchers treat sins, which is so wrong. You can't come at this from I'm good, I'm bad. I'm going to let's have something naughty. Let's have naughty cake. This is a sin, because it's not really about that. And the minute you start denying yourself, first of all, you increase your desire for something when you deny it. But then when you starve yourself and your metabolic rate drops, because of course in medieval times, when you didn't have any food, your body slowed everything to keep you alive. The less you ate, the more it slowed down. And that's how you survived on little food. And then when you got a lot of food, it was feast famine. You could eat a lot, but you never really gained that much weight because you went from feast to famine. But now there's never a famine. There's lots of feasting. But when we put ourselves into starvation mode, our resting metabolic rate becomes so low, whether you do a crash diet or lots and lots of long-term diets. And the science is you can't get that back up again. I've actually found with hypnosis, you really can. You can hypnotize the mind and command it, compel it, direct it, instruct it to increase your metabolic rate over time. It's something I'm working on right now, a whole program just to hypnotize groups to push their metabolic rate back up. But it's such a shame that we've got so far away from what's real. But tell me, where can people find you? Because I know you've written a book. I'd love to hear about your book and where we can find you. Where are you on social media and what are you doing?
So on social media, I'm Simone De La Rue Official. My coaching is on SimoneDeLaRue.com. All of my fitness is Body by Simone. I've just launched a new digital platform called Studio at bodybysimone.com. I'm about to
What is that? What is your digital platform?
So it now, you can take daily live classes of 30 minutes or 55 minutes. There's an on-demand library of over 1,000 different workouts.
Oh, so you don't turn up. They're live online. Is that right?
Yes.
Live
yes.
online. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I have physical studios, one in Brentwood, Los Angeles, and one in West Chelsea in New York. And what was it? I've got an 8-week program online. I've got a postnatal program online. And my book is the 8-week body transformation. So you can find me as lots of different things, mind, body, and soul.
Good. Well, I mean, you do walk, luckily, or not lucky, because it's all work. I always believe in people who walk their talk, and I can look at your skin, your hair. We can see that you're living proof of what you do. And that's terribly important. You know, when you're eating, it shouldn't be, well, is this got no calories, or is this food going to grow me great hair, great nails, great skin, which is why I always believe that fat is your friend and sugar is your enemy. You shouldn't be going low fat and high sugar. You should be going no sugar. The very fact that we talk about essential fats mean that, hey, there must be essential. It's sugar that's your enemy. So I think you're a glowing advert for what you do. Have you got your book? You could hold it up and show us it if you've got one to hand. And of course, that's you. Hold it up more. Let's see the entire body. Wow, that's amazing. So there you are. And I'm going to show you my book, since we're showing books. So I'm very proud of this book. It's amazing. There is a story in here about a girl who had bulimia and a girl who was morbidly obese, and they both kind of understood that it's not just what you eat, it's what's eating you. It's often the pain inside. So yeah, we're here to help you. Simone's here to help you. I'm here to help you. Thank you so much for coming on. Check out my next video here. When you do one loving thing for your body, it will do so many loving things back.
It's not just that you can walk better, you feel better, you jump out of bed better, you probably have better sex. What I think is the main thing that I love about it is that I'm proud of myself for having done this.